The night sky over Russia always looks calm from a distance. Quiet, frozen, untouchable, but on the ground, beneath that stillness, something was breaking. Something the Kremlin couldn't hide, couldn't spin, and couldn't pretend wasn't happening. The illusion of control had shattered, and in its place came fire, panic, and the clearest message Ukraine has ever sent. Russia's war is no longer safe, not in Crimea, not in Rostov, not even in the heart of Russia itself. It began with the arrogance that only collapsing empires possess. Donald Trump had said Ukraine had no cards left. Putin repeated it like a prophecy. Lavrov declared that Russia wouldn't accept any peace plan that wasn't written in the Kremlin's language. Moscow was celebrating itself in front of mirrors, admiring an imaginary victory. But while they were boasting, Ukraine was loading its drones, programming its missiles, and preparing to deliver the harshest reality check Russia had seen in years. The first blow didn't fall in the trenches, it fell in Moscow's energy network. A hub so central that even Russian state media never dared mention it by name. When the explosion lit up the sky, the Kremlin's confidence flickered like the failing power lines, and that was only the beginning. In the hours that followed, Russia's Black Sea fleet was hit in Novorossiysk. Oil terminals in Tuapse erupted in flames, and pipelines feeding the Kremlin's war budget went silent. But none of those compared to what happened in Taganrog. Taganrog had always been one of Russia's most secure military zones, a fortress of S-400s, Pantsir systems, and layered defenses. A place where Russian engineers worked on their most sensitive aviation projects. A place the Kremlin believed Ukraine could never reach. But on that night, Ukraine reached it. And it didn't strike randomly. It hit the one target Moscow feared losing the most, the A-60 airborne laser platform, Russia's secret weapon for space warfare, the aircraft designed to blind satellites and shut down Western eyes in the sky. Russia only had two of them. Only one was functional, and when the smoke cleared, that aircraft was nothing more than a burning skeleton lying in a crater of its own melted metal. Residents counted up to 20 explosions across the city. Videos showed clouds of smoke rising above the hangars. Hangars filled with Tu-95 MS bombers. Russia's long-range terror machines were ripped apart. Holes punched through the walls. Roofs peeled open. Debris everywhere. Russia's proud symbols of strategic power left crippled on the ground before they ever had the chance to take off. Ukraine hadn't just struck a base. It had struck the brain of Russia's aviation program, the place that maintained its bombers, the place that repaired its radar aircraft, the place that tested its space-capable lasers. And Russia had no answer. While the explosions shook Taganrog, something equally strange happened in Novorossiysk. Sirens began to howl across the city, nuclear and chemical alarms. Loudspeakers ordered civilians to take iodine tablets, to seek shelter, to stay away from windows. Panic flooded the streets. Russia's biggest Black Sea port felt like it was facing the end of the world. But moments later, the mayor announced the warning system had been hacked. Someone had seized control of the city's emergency infrastructure. Someone had overridden the Kremlin's messaging. Someone had created chaos inside Russia's borders. And that someone was Ukraine. For all of Putin's talk about strength, he had left the country vulnerable to its own fear. What was Vladimir Putin doing while Russian cities burned, panicked, and plunged into chaos? He wasn't in the Situation Room. He wasn't directing defenses. He wasn't consoling his people. He was dancing. Literally. In Kyrgyzstan, he sat smiling, clapping, and nodding along to folk music. While Moscow lost power, while Novorossiysk thought it was under nuclear threat, while Taganrog saw its rarest aircraft reduced to ash, Putin enjoyed a concert as if he were the leader of a country at peace. The contrast was brutal, and Ukraine exploited it. Because just hours earlier, Kyiv had received news that Donald Trump's peace plan had been rewritten. Zelensky publicly stated he was ready to meet Trump, ready to accept most of the terms, ready to negotiate for an end to the war. But privately, Ukraine's strategy was clear: enter any negotiation from a position of overwhelming military strength. And that meant proving, again and again, that Ukraine could strike deep behind Russian lines with its own weapons. Not Western missiles, not borrowed technology, but the systems Ukraine built itself while the world underestimated them. Bar's jet-powered UA-5S, modified Neptunes, Flamingo strike drones. Ukraine's new generation of domestic weapons weren't just effective, they were rewriting modern warfare. Russia's expensive, lumbering, Soviet-era systems couldn't keep up, and Ukraine knew exactly where to hit. The A-60 laser aircraft wasn't just a plane. It was the embodiment of Russia's fantasy of technological superiority. Designed during the Soviet era, modernized over decades, built to house a megawatt-class laser in its belly, with radar and targeting sensors in its nose. The platform could blind satellites by burning out their optical sensors. In a world where space decides war, the A-60 was supposed to be Russia's ace. Now it was a bonfire in Taganrog, and it can never be replaced. Russia no longer has the industrial base to rebuild such a system. Sanctions have choked access to the components. Engineers have fled. Factories have shifted to crude wartime production. And even if Russia wanted to assemble a new A-60, it would take a decade and billions of dollars it doesn't have. Ukraine destroyed not just an aircraft, but Russia's dream of space dominance. The damage didn't stop there. 3 Tu-95 MS bombers, Russia's long-range carriers of Kh-101 cruise missiles, were inside the hangars that burned. Those bombers are the backbone of Russia's winter strike campaign. They launch from deep inside Russia to hit Ukrainian cities. But you cannot launch a bomber that cannot be maintained, repaired, or modernized. Without the Taganrog facility, Russia's ability to keep these aircraft in the air collapses. Ukraine didn't just strike Russia's army, it struck the support systems behind the army. The airfields, the factories, the repair centers, the supply hubs, the oil terminals, the ports, the radars, the pipelines, the very infrastructure that keeps Russia's war machine breathing. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. While Taganrog burned, another operation unfolded across Russia's Black Sea coast. Neptune smashed into the Shashkary's oil terminal, the center of Russia's Black Sea logistics. Another wave hit the Tuapse refinery, one of the most vital oil processing hubs feeding Russia's budget. Fires burned through pipes, loading arms and manifolds. Storage tanks cracked and ruptured. Russia's oil exports dropped. And with them, the ruble slipped further into weakness. Russia's economy is war-financed. Every missile launched at Ukraine is paid for by oil revenue. And Ukraine had just severed an artery of that revenue. The Russian Navy took damage as well. A large landing ship, Project 1171, was hit in port, the same class of ship Russia used in the early months of the invasion to send armor into southern Ukraine. And even here, in what Russia considered a safe fallback port after losing Sevastopol, they were not safe. Ukraine had turned Novorossiysk from a refuge into a target. This wasn't just a strike, it was a declaration: there is nowhere left where Russia can hide. But perhaps the most devastating part of Ukraine's operation wasn't the physical destruction, it was the psychological one. The hacked alarms, the iodine warnings, civilians believing a nuclear strike was imminent, airports shutting down across southern Russia, flights cancelled in Sochi, Gelendzhik, Krasnodar. The governor admitting the region suffered one of the largest attacks since the war began. Panic rising like smoke, Russia had always promised its people that the war would never come home. That promise was destroyed. And the consequences are more severe than the Kremlin will ever admit. Because the loss of Taganrog's aviation center doesn't only affect Ukraine's front lines, it affects Russia's ability to monitor the skies. Russia's A-50 AWACS fleet, its airborne radar platforms, are already critically short. Ukraine has shot them out of the sky. Taganrog was the only place where those aircraft could be repaired or rebuilt. With the hangars destroyed, the runways cratered, and engineers fleeing, Russia's remaining A-50s may soon be grounded permanently. Without AWACS, Russia's fighter jets are blind. They cannot coordinate, they cannot track Ukrainian missiles, they cannot respond effectively. They cannot hold air superiority. And for the first time since 1943, Russia risks losing the airspace above its own territory. The destruction of the A-60 laser aircraft hit Russia's dream of space warfare. The destruction of the Taganrog maintenance base hit Russia's long-range bombers. The damage to Novorossiysk hit Russia's oil budget. The shutdown of airports hit Russia's civilian morale. And all of it happened while Putin danced in a foreign country. Ukraine struck at the image Putin spent decades building, the image of invincibility, the image of stability, the image of a fortress Russia, and that image evaporated in one night. The truth is brutal. Russia can no longer prevent Ukraine from striking deep inside its territory. Its air defenses are fragmented, its radar network is stretched, its command system is slow, its elite military units are exhausted, its economy is bleeding, and winter is coming. Ukraine's strategy is brutally simple: break Russia's ability to sustain the war, break its air force, break its naval logistics, break its export revenue, break its morale, break the illusion that Russia is untouchable, and by doing so, force any future negotiations to lean in Ukraine's favor. Trump's proposed peace plan, as it stands, benefits Russia more than Ukraine. It rewards land theft. It forces Ukraine to reduce its army. It imposes limits on Ukrainian strikes. It freezes the conflict in Russia's favor. Kyiv knows this, and Kyiv is preparing to walk into those talks with leverage, not desperation. Every explosion inside Russia is a bargaining chip. Every destroyed bomber is a negotiating tool. Every burning pipeline is a message. Ukraine decides the cost of Russia's war. The Kremlin is trapped. If Putin negotiates, he looks weak. If he refuses, he looks incompetent. If he retaliates, he wastes resources he can no longer replace. He promised Russia safety. He promised victory. He promised stability. Now none of those promises hold. Ukraine has shifted the war's center of gravity. Russia's home front is becoming a battlefield, and the consequences are only beginning. The world is now watching not whether Russia wins or loses, but how fast its military, its economy, and its political system unravel under pressure. Because the moment an empire reveals it cannot defend its own territory, the countdown begins, and the countdown has started. Before you go, remember, we're completely independent. No big networks, no sponsors, and no government influence. In a world full of corruption and scripted news, your support keeps real journalism alive. So please like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps.